Okay. You ready? Okay. Good morning. My name is Bill Henry. I am a councilman from the 4th District and chair of the City Council's Equity and Structure Committee. I am here today to open the hearing for 3 charter amendments. Technically, I'm sorry, a work session. First, we will be hearing City Council Bill 19-0381, Charter Amendment, Removal of Elected Officials. I am also joined virtually today by Councilman Christopher Burnett of the 8th District, Vice Chair of the committee, who is muted. Councilwoman Danielle McCray of the Pekin District, also a member of the committee. And
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We are joined by Mr. Matthew Stegman of the Mayor's Office. And I am joined here in chambers by Mr. Sam Johnson of the Office of Council Services and Ms. Casey Kelleher of my office. And I think we can see everyone else on here as well. So we're going to start with 19-0381. This charter amendment was introduced by Councilman Burnett. It was previously heard on January 15th of this year. And at that time, Councilman Burnett expressed an interest in working on additional amendments to it. So I'm going to turn this over to Councilman Burnett and ask if there are further amendments that he wishes to offer for this charter amendment. And he's still muted.
There we go. I'm back. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So the only amendments that I have put forth, or will be putting for the committee to consider, are the amendments that allow for provisions. There we go. It's up on the screen there. Thank you. There are 3 amendments which would create a petition process for initiate the removal process. So right now, the council can initiate this process as the bill is currently written. This would allow the public with at least 20% of the qualified voters in Baltimore City signing onto a petition that's verified to also initiate this process. This would not necessarily lead to an outcome one way or the other, but it would start the process. And so that's what I'm putting forward. But I do know that we've received amendments from the law department that I should probably discuss.
Okay. First, I would ask if there were any questions on your amendments from Councilwoman McCray or any of the other staff members on the call. If you have a question, please unmute yourself and jump in, because I'm not sure that I can see everybody's name at one time to see if you have your hand raised icon. But hearing nothing.
Councilman Burnett, can you explain your amendment again?
So the amendment would allow the removal process. So there's a process that is laid out in the bill that requires it to be referred to the Judiciary Committee. There's a series of hearings that have to take place and a vote. The bill, as currently written with unamended, allows for that to be solely a process that is initiated by the City Council. The amended version, after getting feedback from the public, would allow for the process to be initiated via petition by 20% of the voters in Baltimore City. It's a very high threshold for something that is, frankly, something that should have a very, very high threshold to be initiated. So this is what I'm putting forward, and the reason there's 3 amendments is that there are several areas in the bill that this needs to be inserted into for the council president, mayor, and comptroller. But they're all essentially are the same, exact same thing.
So is this a recall?
We can't do recalls in the state of Maryland. So no, it's not a recall.
Mr. Chair, Elena.
Yes.
I can't figure out how to do my little hand thing. I just want to say, I think the law department would like some time to make sure that this doesn't amount to a recall in the eyes of the courts. There's been quite a few cases on this aspect of, elections. And so if you could give us that opportunity, we would be grateful for that.
Elena, I have no objection to the law department studying this. I would say that since it's pretty clear from the language that all the petition does is bring the issue before the city council, at which point the council gets to use its own judgment and make the decision. I don't share that concern to the same level, but
I feel like it's my obligation to check it out.
I understand. So what I would ask Councilman Burnett is, we have another hearing on Thursday of this week already scheduled. How would you feel about holding off on a formal vote on this amendment until Thursday, such that we would give the law department a couple days to do their due diligence?
I'm okay with that. I just a little frustrated because this was presented at the last committee hearing, and the law department said the exact same thing.
Well, I apologize for that. This has just been a crazy time for us. We've barely had time to breathe. We've been inundated with pandemic-related things, and we just haven't even been able to. I mean, all of us are working overtime. We're doing the best we can, but I promise I will have some to you by tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay. We also need to consider the law department's proposed amendments for this. I have in front of me a memo dated April 17th, 2020 from Mr. Petro. And I just want to check in, make sure that all committee members have it. Councilwoman McCray, do you have a copy of this memo?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Then why don't I turn this over to Elena, and Elena, if you would share your concerns on this particular topic with the committee.
Sure. I said this in my original report, and I just wanted to reiterate it now because it's been quite a few months since our last opportunity to discuss this. My goal here was just to make everybody aware that there is a constitutional requirement with respect to removal from office. I don't think most of the public even is aware of that. Many of the counties in their provisions actually acknowledge the existence of this constitutional provision, and then have their lesser standard for other types of removable offenses, for lack of a better word. So I understand the concern that the council, the chair, Councilman Henry, has expressed regarding the city council. He feels the city council should be able to remove for a felony or a misdemeanor that would also be the subject of immediate removal upon conviction. And I expressed my concern that that there's a lesser standard for evidentiary standard at the council level than there is at a trial, and where you would get a conviction that would lead to automatic removal. And I was just concerned that that you would be basically convicting someone on a lesser standard, and all the consequences would be different. That would be they'd be removed from office, as opposed to perhaps spending time in jail, depending on what the type of the offense and what the judge's ruling was on that. So that's
Yeah,
I
I appreciate the law department's concerns, perhaps without sharing them to the same extent. First of all, I distinguish between being convicted of a crime in court and being removed from office in terms of the difference in the potential differing levels of proof required. No one has a right to hold an office that an elective office is given because of the democratic mandate from the people. And from the very fact that the city council replaces people who have been either removed from office or have voluntarily or involuntarily left office, the council already effectively substitutes its judgment by electing a new president of the city council, by electing new council members. The current charter allows for the council to elect a new comptroller if there's a vacancy in that office. I see that as saying that the people of Baltimore City are comfortable with the council making those kinds of decisions. And if the people of Baltimore City feel that someone has taken an action or an or has been responsible for inaction that is of such import that they should no longer be holding the office that they hold, it seems contrary to the wishes of the public to wait for what can be an extraordinarily lengthy legal case to grind through, where the question is not necessarily did they commit the crime as much as do they still have the mandate of the people to continue to hold power. And so I appreciate the concerns, but
I'd just like to add one more thing, that in general, I mean, the Attorney General's office has said with respect to this that that if a matter is covered by that constitutional provision, you can provide for expulsion for other circumstances that are not covered by Section 2. So that was one of the bases for my concern as well, that the courts and the Attorney General's office have sort of made a distinction between grounds that are present in Section 2 of the Constitution and other grounds that the legislature or the council can provide for in its own laws.
Again, as I said, I appreciate the concerns, but speaking very personally, having now lived through this twice in the last 10 or 11 years, I would prefer to err on the side of allowing the council to have this capability. Mm-hmm. And if it comes to it, if God forbid we find ourselves in this situation again after passing this charter amendment, and and a court wishes to take notice because the elected official that is under threat of removal takes the matter to a court, and a court wishes to find at that time that the law department's concerns are justified, then we'll deal with that then. But I don't want to be in a position of we can't even try to do what we think needs to be done because we did not allow ourselves that ability. In the most recent case, there was a year between the point at which there was a strong movement from the masses to see the mayor removed from office, and when the legal system actually convicted her and would have removed her at that point. We are fortunate that she chose to step down voluntarily, but since there's nothing that would have compelled her to do so, we could have been in a situation where we waited for a year with somebody running the city who should not have been. And I feel uncomfortable taking a chance of letting that situation arise again. Committee members, any other thoughts on the law department's proposed amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share those sentiments as well, which is the impetus for introducing the charter amendment for consideration by the council. I would also want to toss it over to Mr. Anthony DeFranco over at Legislative Reference. We spoke about this morning, and he pointed out that, one, there are other jurisdictions that have provisions that could be interpreted in the same way, and those have not been challenged, in addition to the fact that our own provisions already in the charter existed before this case. But I do want to just, if you're okay with that, Mr. Chair, to hand it over to him to explain a little bit more on his findings related to other municipalities and how this fits into the city charter already. If you're okay with that, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm sorry. Councilwoman McRae, did you have any comments?
Oh, Mr. Chair, did you hear me?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I missed the last one.
So I wanted to see if we could hand it to Tony DeFranco from Legislative Reference. I spoke to him this morning, and he had some comments as well about how this already fits into our charter, as well as how other municipalities, surrounding jurisdictions, also have similar provisions.
I'm sorry. By all means, Mr. DeFranco.
So the charter already allows for removal of the council president and the comptroller for a misdemeanor. So it seems to me that currently you could probably, with regard to a misdemeanor in office, I don't even know if it says misdemeanor in office, but for a misdemeanor, if the council president committed a misdemeanor, or if the comptroller committed a misdemeanor, you could probably exercise your removal power according to the charter. And I would just point out that Anne Arundel County, which is the charter that's the subject of the case that was cited in the law department's report, they go beyond the Maryland Constitution by allowing removal for misfeasance or malfeasance in office. So hearing the chair's views and hearing the Councilman Burnett's views, I think that what the committee, what the charter amendment would be doing is consistent with those.
Well, Leopold noted that they could not remove for crimes that were mentioned in the constitutional provision.
Did it?
I'm pretty sure. I think I say that in my memo here. Let me just scroll down. Let's see. Find it.
Because I thought that the court spoke pretty not complimentary of the Anne Arundel County charter, but it just noted that, there are two sort of pathways. It says that, based on the statutory scheme currently in place, Leopold may be removed by operation of law if found guilty under the Maryland Constitution. The court goes on to say this is consistent with the provisions of the Anne Arundel County Charter, which states that the office of the county executive may be declared vacant by ordinance of the county council with an affirmative vote of not less than 5 members if the county executive is found guilty of a crime involving moral turpitude.
I'm pretty sure they went on to say that since misconduct in office is considered a misdemeanor related to public duties and responsibilities, it cannot be one of the grounds for which the council may remove an elected official. So I don't have the case in front of me. That was just out of my report.
Okay. Mr. DeFranco, did you have a further response?
I don't. No.
So we can double check on that, but that's what I was. Yeah, that it was that and the AG's opinion that I was basing my concerns on. So,
Councilman Burnett. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was going to Councilman Burnett because I can see that your hand is raised, but
I raised that before. Sorry, let me unraise it.
Okay,
Put it down.
Let me go to Councilwoman McCray. Did you have any comments or questions?
So, Mr. Petro, the memo that you're referencing, or Mr. DeFranco, the case that you're referencing, do you guys have a case to it, a case or a link or something that you can send us?
yes, I can send you the link, definitely. Who would like to receive it? Everybody on the committee?
Yeah, if you just send it to Mr. Johnson, he will distribute it to the entire
Okay,
committee.
yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. It might take me a few minutes. You're not waiting for me, are you?
Oh, no. I was getting ready to say,
Good.
were there any other questions from anyone else on the call about the law department's proposed amendments? Any other questions or comments? Oh, that's funny. Okay. I was looking to see if anyone else had their hand raised, and what I found is there is some type of notification that when you hover over it, it says this attendee is not paying attention, which I did not realize when
not looking
tracked, and so I'm glad to know that for future meetings. Okay, so seeing no other questions or comments about the proposed amendment, next I would go to, are there any other proposed amendments from any other members or from any other agencies? Because if not, I would go to general discussion. Are there any other questions about or comments about this charter amendment before I ask the members of the committee if they would like to consider any of these amendments?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we should, if I may, hold off on them until because I think Councilmember McCray wanted to see the legal reference. And I know that the law department wanted to weigh in on the amendments I proposed. So I would ask if we could hold off until all of that's been taken care of, and then move for any votes or anything like that, in case there are other questions that come up.
Okay.
We have more information coming in.
Councilwoman McCray, does that work for you?
Yes, it does.
Then what we'll do is we will table this bill until Thursday's hearing at 11 o'clock, right? At 11 o'clock. We already are hearing 3 other charter amendments that day, but we will also return to this matter, and we will consider these 2 sets of amendments at that time. Okay, then without further ado, let us move to the next one, which would be still on 381. Okay. 20-0491, Charter Amendment, City Auditor Powers and Duties. This was a charter amendment to allow the city auditor subpoena power pursuant to the subsection in any court of competent jurisdiction. I'm sorry, that's where they would enforce it. trying to remember if there were proposed amendments. I don't see any. No. Do we have any questions or comments about this charter amendment? Then at this time, I would ask if there is a motion to move City Council Bill 20-0491 with a favorable report.
Make a motion. Move the bill.
A second.
All right, that being moved and seconded. Sam, do you want to? Okay, then I'll. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Well, I kind of asked if there was anybody interested, but we will ask if there's any, specifically, is there any public testimony on this charter amendment, which was also previously heard on February 27th. Thank you. Are there any comments from the public or from any other city agencies?
Mr. Chair, this is Hillary Ruley from the Law Department.
Yes, Hillary, what can I do? Oh.
I just wanted to make you aware, and again, it's your prerogative to adopt or not, but the last three sentences of my bill report suggests an amendment to remove some confusion. So you might want to consider that.
Oh, yes, I do remember that conversation. I prefer not to avoid that confusion, so I'm not inclined to offer such an amendment unless one of the other members of the committee would like to instead. Okay. If there are no other comments, then we have a motion before us. I'm going to call the roll. The chair votes aye. Councilman Burnett?
Aye.
Councilman Burnett votes aye. Councilwoman McCray?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCray votes aye. With 3 votes in the affirmative, this bill moves forward with a favorable report and will be on second reader at the council's next full meeting. And then we turn to the last one before us. I'm sorry, we're going to recess for just a moment. And we're now calling the hearing back to order. We're moving on now to City Council 19-0441, Charter Amendment, Charter Review Commission. This charter amendment was introduced by the council president. And after we had previously heard it and brought it out on second reader, there were some concerns that were brought to the committee that we agreed we should address. And so the council recommitted this bill, and I'm offering a set of amendments to address the concerns that were raised. Do I have Well, I was looking for a copy of the letter that had the concerns, which, actually, no, I was looking to see if you had a hard copy. If you don't have the hard copy, don't worry, because I'd rather leave the amendments themselves up on the screen. But the first amendment is to clarify what it means to actually have this commission happen every 10 years and to create some specificity on when it will actually happen. And so what this charter amendment will require is that essentially every 10 years in the first year of each decade, there will be a commission, and the first one will have to be established between January 1 and May 1 of 2021. I'm sorry, that also includes the Second Amendment. Casey, I'm going to need you to scroll down or move to the next page. Thank you. Okay. The Third Amendment adds some technical assistance by requiring that the city solicitor or their designee, the director of legislative reference or their designee, I believe on the next page it adds the head of the office of council services or their designee, the deputy controller or their designee, and the general counsel to the city council. These people will provide technical assistance and effectively staffing to the Charter Review Commission. If you can scroll back up again. And the total size of the commission was increased when it was pointed out that the way the amendment was originally written, only the mayor, the council president, and the comptroller were nominating members to the commission. So we made the commission larger by giving each member of the city council the ability to appoint a member. And because the group is going to be larger than originally expected, we added a vice chair as well as a chair. So scroll down. And then, is that it? Okay, so those are the changes that that have been proposed to address the concerns. They've been shared with the sponsor, the council president, who doesn't have any problems with them. There are any questions or comments from the committee? Councilman Burnett or Councilwoman McCray? Seeing none. Any questions or comments from city agencies?
Yeah, my hand's up, Chairman.
Oh, there, Vic, sorry.
So I've got comments on a number of these things. Let me go back up and scroll up to where I was. The first thing is in section 1, you have taken out the flexibility of having a commission whenever you need a commission. You have it now that you're going to have it, you have to have it only once every 10 years. My thought, the original draft said you shall have it at least every 10 years, which allowed some flexibility, is that if something happens in the next year or two, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and you want to address that with a large convention or a commission, then you are prohibited from doing that except on the decennial date that you have here. And that would also go to the terms of the commission on section 2. So as long as you remain with what I would think would be inflexible language, then you're going to need 1 and 2. But if the original language, of course, was just to allow you to have these commissions whenever you need them, but at least every 10 years.
So, Vic, I understand that concern, but looking at line 3 on page 1, before you get into the amendments, it says, for the purpose of requiring a charter review commission. I do not read that as being exclusive. I see no reason why, even with the amendments as proposed, there's anything stopping the mayor and city council of the city of Baltimore from having a charter review commission whenever they want. They just definitely have to have one on this. If they want to have, if they want to, I mean, we had a charter review commission a couple of years ago. I didn't think it was a particularly effective one, but we had one. There's nothing that prevents the mayor, the city council, the mayor and city council from creating a charter review commission whenever they want.
My comment there is that the reason why we were able to have it 2 years ago is basically we had nothing in writing at all. This says we do have something in writing. So there would be ambiguity. I would read this as saying we need to have it every 10 years. And because you have done such a comprehensive job, I would say that the fallback, that is the interpretation here, would be most likely that this is the only time you can have it. Now, if you want language to say you have to have it decennially, that's fine, but I think you probably need some language that basically softens it up a little bit, makes it clear that any time prior to that, or any time you really want to have it, that you can have it.
Is Mr. DeFranco still here?
Yes.
Let me ask a question. If in the First Amendment, instead of striking at least once every 10 years, and you just had strike once every 10 years, so that it read, for the purpose of requiring a charter review commission at least decennially.
That would essentially take you back to where you were before, which is...
No, and then you continue with all the other stuff.
Sure.
So it would still have to be, you'd still have to have one at the beginning.
The concern, I believe, that was raised was that the bill, as the charter amendment as introduced, was nebulous, was too nebulous, especially when you look at the way that other counties do it. Baltimore County does it in the 7th year of every decade. Montgomery County does it, I believe, every other year. So I believe the concern from the outside stakeholder was that, we really need to put some sort of...
Yeah, and I'm not walking back the need to add the additional structure. I still like the idea of this is when you're going to have one. You're always going to have one in the first year of the decade. What I'm trying to address is Victor's concern that the language is now so structured that it allows some to interpret it as preempting additional charter review commissions along the way. But before either of you answer that, Council President Scott is on the line, and I would like to recognize him and hear his comments as well. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties with allowing me to get into WebEx today. So I think for me, Mr. Chair, again, I want us to have the flexibility. I think that Mr. DeFranco knows, as I work with him on the creation of this, that I want a commission to happen at least every 10 years. But if it needs to happen in a different way or a more, we also need to have the ability to have it if something happens, something big happens, some big change happens. We might need it now post COVID-19 to see how we might have to change everything with the structure. I think we do need that flexibility, but above and beyond that, I am am a-okay with the other amendments of adding people and changing, adding more folks to the commission as well.
Mr. President, would it be okay with you if it addresses Mr. Tavalla's concerns if we added an additional line that just explicitly says additional charter review commissions may be appointed as needed?
I mean, that's fine by me. I would want to see what Victor says from a legal standpoint and what Tony thinks about that as well.
Okay, Victor?
Yeah, I think we need to work up the language a little bit. And if you just give us a few minutes, we can probably do that, or we can pass this off and vote on this on Thursday. But so we would have to modify section 1 slightly, just slightly, and section 2 slightly to accommodate change here.
And Victor, your thing is about having the flexibility, correct? And that's the thing that I want as well.
Exactly. I think I have worked. I've been the chief legal advisor to 8 different charter boards all around Maryland, and probably 24 other municipal charter boards. And I'm telling you, you want this flexibility. And if there's any ambiguity that would close down flexibility, we need to resolve that now.
Okay. Well, let's just get it resolved now.
Mr. Chair, and Mr. President, I'm happy to work with Victor in getting something together.
If the two of you can the two of you work out something that we could also take up on Thursday?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I am comfortable tabling this one as well until we get to Thursday's hearing. But first, I will check and see if we have any other. Vic, your hand is still up.
Yeah, can I there's more I wanted to say about some of the amendments.
I'm sorry. Go, please.
Probably with no effect, but I'm going to say it anyhow. The provision about expanding the size of the commission. And one thing you ought to bear in mind about this thing, when charters are initially created under Article 11A of the Maryland Constitution, the maximum number you can have in a charter commission is 9 members. And that's why the original draft of this was 9 members, because if you have to create a charter out of whole cloth, never having anything, 9 members is all you can have under the Constitution. I am reminded, get into this, I'm reminded that according to when I was a grad student in public administration, we were reading things saying the best size of a work group is 5. And if you have to go to 9, you're okay. But if you have 15, 20, 30, as sometimes our commissions have, it becomes a bit of a football. So, at the end of the day, I appreciate why every member of the city council needs to have a representative on this thing. But in terms of size, my recommendation is to keep it smaller for whatever that's worth at this point.
For what it's worth, Vic, I agree with you. I find this I think the term is Hobson's choice. But I'm glad to hear you make those comments, and I hope that you will be willing to share those with the committee again on Thursday when we take up the amendments in the composition of the city council and what its size should be. I will use the chair's prerogative to point out now that if the city council were smaller, each member of the city council could nominate a member to the commission and have the commission be smaller as well. I take your point. I think there is an expectation that a larger commission will function in committees, much as I recall the last one did. Although the way it functioned was it had committees where only 1 or 2 members of each committee were formally members of the commission. And this would be a little bit different structurally, more like an actual legislative body. I just wanted to be clear. when you are creating a charter out of whole cloth, when the Constitution requires that the commission be no larger than 9, that if not the Constitution prohibiting us from having a charter review commission that is larger than 9.
You're right. There's no, in fact, we know that counties have larger than 9 on charter review commissions. So it's absolutely true. The one we had a couple of years ago had actually like 32 members on it. So, I mean, it's, and you have to break it down in committee. My experience has been, and as I said, it's been extensive over the last 30 years. I've worked tons of these things. My experience has been is when you jump into these little committees, they're not as good as committees as a whole that are hearing all of the issues, because they don't really, all the people on the commission don't understand all the issues because they weren't there for the conversations. So, well, I've said my piece. For me, it's smaller is better, but you're going to do what you're going to do. Yeah.
I understand and appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from city agencies? And seeing none, are there any comments or questions from the public? All right. Seeing none, I am going to declare this hearing. Well, I guess we've tabled 2 of the things and passed 1. So I guess unless there is objection from Councilman Burnett or Councilwoman McCray, I'm going to close this hearing and remind all the viewers and participants that the Equity and Structure Committee will reconvene on Thursday, the 23rd? Thursday the 23rd at 11 o'clock. Technically here in council chambers, but effectively online through Cisco WebEx. Thank you very much for attending the hearing. Because you're all in your own homes or places of work, I don't have to remind anybody to take with you all of your stuff when you leave the council chambers. Thank you very much and have a good day.